We are not some banana republic, for God's sakes. What are we going to do next? Have a Putin poisoning posse and start finding political opponents foaming at the mouth at home, not so mysteriously dying in their lazy boy recliners?
Dr. Phil is quickly becoming a thorn in the side of the political and cultural left. They used to love this guy. He was Oprah's doctor, by the way. I mean, Oprah produced his show, created the whole Dr. Phil phenomenon, and he was right there with Oprah on everything. But something has changed with Dr. Phil, and we want to check in on him. It's been a little while. He's been really strong on border issues. He's been strong on Islamic revolutionaries taking over college campuses. I think that was the last video we did. Oh, and telling the truth about the whole transgender cult. He's been just fantastic on all that stuff. So I wonder how Dr. Phil feels about the verdict against Donald Trump, convicting a former president and the current candidate for president. Well, Dr. Phil, how does that strike you?
This weaponization, the FBI, Justice Department, will lead to one of two outcomes. One is more of the same from the other side. That may seem deserved, but it is not the right way forward. The other is what I call on you to demand from your politicians today: an end to this craziness in order to save the soul and sanity of our country. We are all brothers and sisters, and there must be no resentment among us. For any war to truly end, forgiveness is necessary. That is true of any war, including our current cultural war. We need our Justice Department to return to the business of meting out justice and not running the political agendas of those currently in power and attacking political opponents. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. We are not some banana republic, for God's sakes. What are we going to do next? Have a Putin poisoning posse and start finding political opponents foaming at the mouth at home, not so mysteriously dying in their lazy boy recliners? We're better than that. We must be better than that. I don't like what I see happening in our country. I don't like seeing the weaponization of our justice system. Just make my skin crawl. This is so not just about Trump. If you let your hatred for Donald Trump compromise your ability to find true north on your moral compass, shame on you.
All right, now there's more to this, and I'm going to play it out, but I think that this is a good moment to just sort of pause and reflect on what we're hearing here. And by the way, this needs to get out. I hope you can share this video with your friends on Facebook or social media, especially those who are sort of steeped in this revenge culture that many of us, me included, are feeling right now, because this is good for reflection. It's good to sort of analyze exactly where we are and where we should be headed. I appreciate Dr. Phil and the presentation that he just gave and will continue to give. I appreciate him quoting Jesus Christ on the cross about forgiveness. And forgiveness is important. It's an important value on a personal level for each of us in our interactions with everyone around us, with our family, with our friends, with our enemies, with everyone we interact with. I mean, Jesus, when he taught us to pray, specifically said that we should, in speaking with our Father every day, forgive us for our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Our ability to forgive other people is part and parcel to our calling as Christians. I get that, and I appreciate it. Here's the thing. When it comes to the political process that we're embroiled in right now in this country, I would love to live in the world that Dr. Phil lives in right now, where he thinks that the party that steps up and says, that's it, this has gone too far, for God's sake, have you no decency, sir? It must end now. Put us into power and it will all end. We'll take the high ground. Let's say Republicans did that. In fact, we don't have to imagine this. You see, this is exactly what Donald Trump did do in 2016. Everyone's yelling at Donald Trump. It's like, oh, he's upset that he just got prosecuted. Let's not forget, this is the guy who ran on lock her up, lock her up. It's true. He did run on lock her up. Barack Obama, by the way, ran on the idea that George Bush was a corrupt president who got us into a war for his own personal gain, okay? And was anti-science because he came up with a negotiated compromise on stem cell research. I'll never forget that one. Politicians say a lot of ugly things when they're running for office. I don't necessarily always judge my politicians on what they say. I'm naive, I know, but I judge them on what they actually do. And no one should ever forget that 1 week after Donald Trump was elected president in 2016, when asked about investigating Hillary Clinton, He said, yeah, you know what? She's been through a lot. The country's been through a lot. It'd be too divisive if we did that. So he didn't. Now, Dr. Phil, in the world you're living in right now, that should have been the end of it. He took the high ground and he said, no, we're not going to do that. But look what happened to Donald Trump. Actually, don't even look what happened to Donald Trump. Look what happened to us. Look at what happened to our country. Look at what happened to the citizens in this country, and certainly the people who supported and wanted to see Donald Trump's agenda go through. Look at what happened to the people who voted for him with the weaponization of the Justice Department. Hillary Clinton gave millions of dollars to a foreign spy to create a fake dossier on the President of the United States. And that dossier was then used as the basis for a secret FBI investigation into the president and his team. It crippled the presidency, and it was all bogus. It was all made up. But then they didn't stop there. Now, forgive us if we think the only way this stops is if they feel the same pain that we're feeling. I would love to listen to my better angels, Dr. Phil, but this isn't a television show. And if Donald Trump gets into office and then doesn't robustly investigate the DOJ and the FBI and the district attorneys who have been working with them to weaponize our judicial system, to investigate judges who are politically biased and using the power of the bench to enact revenge and penalties against political opponents, if he doesn't do all of that, it will continue. In fact, it will get worse. It's part of a president's job to make sure and ensure to the American people that we don't have a corrupt system. Now, that may not sound very Christian, and maybe it isn't. But this isn't about revenge for revenge's sake. This isn't about gratuitously inflicting pain on somebody because we get our kicks out of it. It's about fixing our country. This country, which, by the way, is a pretty important element in God's plan on this planet. So we'll go back to Dr. Phil here because, I respect the man and I like what he has to say, but I also think, given the enemies we're dealing with, it's a little naive. And if you want to reshoot this through a Christian portal, as he is, when you back off from Satan and you say, all right, enough is enough, I'm going to take the high ground. I'm not going to engage in you and him. I'm going to fight you anymore. I'm not going to try to harm you. I'm just going to go my way, and I expect you to do the same. Does Satan back down? I mean, you're the one who brought up Christianity here. Does Satan back down?
We need leaders who will pledge to end this vicious cycle right now and return us to that safe place where our institutions are no longer bastardized and weaponized, but rather simply serve their intended purpose. The current administration could and should do the right thing. Dismiss now all such lawfare, pledge to return to the normal functioning of a government rightly run.
Well, listen, that was strong, and it was powerful, and good for him. And I have no doubt that he's sincere. And I want that. Listen, if that were to happen, if Joe Biden, they announced, today, all right, enough, call it off. This is bad. This is wrong. We've had second thoughts. We should have never done this. Okay. First of all, it would prove that they have been behind it. They're also never going to do that because they're incredibly ruthless. They're incredibly ruthless. And frankly, I believe what they say. I believe they believe what they say, that Donald Trump is the single most threatening person to the future of the country they envision. Because he probably is. The country they want, where they're in charge, and the rest of us lemmings just, go where we're supposed to go and where we're told, and keep paying our taxes so that they can keep spending it however they want for their friends and their pals. Yeah, that Donald Trump probably is a threat to that. I believe them when they say they must stop Donald Trump. And again, to remind you, what they mean is they want to stop you from voting for him. You're the problem in this whole equation. You are. So listen, if that were to happen, Dr. Phil, that's great. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen by any stretch of the imagination. And the fact of the matter is, if I can continue along sort of the spiritual and theological road that Dr. Phil was walking, it's not enough to just call a truce and say, okay, we got to be better than this. Let's move on. No, no, there needs to be what's called reconciliation. Okay. And reconciling involves more than just saying, I'm sorry. Okay, let's go. No, reconciliation deserves the truth. Reconciliation requires facts. Reconciliation requires everybody to understand exactly what went wrong, who did the wrong things, admit and ask for forgiveness for doing those wrong things, then granting forgiveness and moving on as a healed nation. That requires transparency. It requires accountability. And by the way, it also requires punishment. Again, shot through a biblical lens, atonement is never acquired without some punishment. When David sinned, yes, he was forgiven, but he also was punished. And if you want to get New Testament on me, Christ suffered quite a bit for our sins. So we need the truth. It will set you free. We need to know everything that happened. We need to know who did what. And we need accountability and punishment for the people who did wrong. And yes, you will also have our forgiveness so that we can move on. But not without those other things first.